Good afternoon, everyone. I hate to break up the wonderful conversation and discussion that's going on. It's so wonderful to have so many of you here on this evening. Thank you so much for coming, and for some who probably haven't, many of you whom have not been home yet from school, thank you for being here. Thank parents and teachers. Certainly want to thank Ms. Kristen Eubanks, the principal of this beautiful school, for the lovely introduction by her student ambassadors outdoors who greeted us and escorted us in. I really, really appreciate that very much. My name is Chip Jackson, and I am chair of the Richland School District 2 Board of Trustees, and I, along with my colleagues, are very, very happy to be here on this evening. I certainly want to, before I begin my brief remarks and welcome, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor if you would, and I'd like to ask if everyone would stand for just a moment of silence, if you will, for me. We want to remember the family of one of our students, Mr. Shamore Robinson, who's a Westwood student who lost his life earlier this week, and a few days ago, rather, and certainly want to remember his family in this time. So if we would just take a moment of silence and remember today, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. You may be seated. I want to welcome you. I made some notes, something I don't usually do, and it helps me to stay on track and to stay focused, and so forgive me for reading. And it's really weird, too, because I kind of feel like a stand-up comedian with this microphone. It's really weird because the glasses that I have on, I don't have to wear them except to read, and I can see this very clearly. Everyone out there looks very blurry to me, so forgive me for not looking at you a lot, not because I don't care, but because I can't recognize your faces if I do. But again, I want to welcome you to the first of UN2 meetings that we're having in our district. This idea was birthed from an opportunity that we wanted to see created, and that would create a positive dialogue and communication about what's going on in Richland School District 2. And so I'm very excited to be able to be a part of the first one of many that I hope we will have as we go forward, allowing organizations and community groups and parents and teachers and students and all to be to come together and to be informed of what's going on in our district. At this time, I'd like to recognize our board members who are present here, and these are the ladies and gentlemen who work tirelessly to make sure that the district that we work and serve in and love so dearly continues to be a stellar district. And so at this time, I'd like you to join me as I introduce and welcome them to you. Our Vice Chairman of our board, Mr. James Manning. Board member, Mrs. Melinda Anderson. Board member, Dr. Monica Elkins Johnson. And last but certainly not least, board member, Mrs. Susan Brill. Thank you very much. I also want to recognize our district superintendent, Dr. Debbie Hamm. Thank you. I don't have to applaud, but I want to recognize all of our school administrators, our principals and our teachers and our district officials and school parent groups, students and any advisory board members who are here. And if there are any other elected officials who are present and I have not recognized your presence, would you stand at this time? Okay, thank you very much. I think in order to be an informed parent and a tax-paying citizen of the Northeast Columbia area, it's important for us to be informed and to have accurate information about our community, how our tax dollars are being spent, and how our schools and our students are performing. As a school board, we have the fiduciary responsibility to ensure that we are good stewards of the tax dollars that we receive that are entrusted to the district to make sure that we make good use of them. We have the moral responsibility to ensure that all 27,000 students get an outstanding education. We have the professional responsibility to ensure that the district we work in hires the best teachers and administrators, rewards our national board performing teachers, support our classroom instruction with the best resources available to meet the unique needs of every child at every level in every school. And so I want to take a moment of personal privilege to thank all of you who are here tonight who worked so hard, from SIC organizations to PTO organizations to business advisory groups and parent advisory groups and all the other groups, the booster clubs and band clubs and band boosters and all of the other groups that are involved in our schools for ensuring that we continue to work together as partners in this educational pursuit in District 2. Over the past couple of years, our district has evolved and has grown significantly. And so it doesn't mean that our job has gotten easier. It has become more difficult and more challenging, because as we continue to grow, our goal is to continue to maintain that small community, family-based school experience that many of your children and my children experienced when they attended Richland Two schools. And because we are continuing to grow and get larger, it requires more resources, a greater effort, more diversity, more different ways of educating all of the students that we are entrusted, whose care is entrusted into our hands. And so I wanted to thank you tonight for the hard work that you've done over the past year, and I am excited because I know that the information that will be shared tonight will be a reflection of, once again, another stellar and outstanding year by Richland School District 2. Does it mean that we don't have our challenges? Absolutely not. We continue to have our challenges, but I really fervently believe that the board is committed to addressing those challenges head on and not wavering in our commitment to doing everything that's within our legal power to make sure that we have the absolute best school district and continue to have the best school district in this area or anywhere in this region. But it takes your help, and I want to thank you in advance for your help, your dedication, and your commitment. With that, I'll say welcome again tonight, and at this time I'm going to turn over the rest of the program. I almost said service. I'm on my way to church tonight. I'm going to turn over the rest of the program to Ms. Libby York, our Public Relations Director for the district. Libby?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Good evening, everyone. Let me start by explaining what we're going to do for the next 60 minutes, because this is a new event. Okay, don't start throwing those oranges at me that Shelley was giving out back there. I'm not going to be up here talking the entire time. But I do need you to be my guinea pigs, if you don't mind, for just a little bit. See, I'm going to try my hand at giving a TED Talk on Richland Two. Those of you who are familiar with TED Talks, very popular on the internet. Never done that before, and in full disclosure, I've never given a talk about Richland Two like this, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. After I finish, our superintendent, Debbie Hamm, will come forward to talk about areas of focus as we look into the next school year and beyond. Then she'll sit down with 2 former district teachers of the year and get those questions, hopefully, that you filled in. And they will go through the questions, and she has her expert panel here, executive staff members and other district office staff to help her to answer those questions. So if you have the question card, which I hope you picked one up, feel free to fill it out anytime during the presentation. Hold it up. We have communication staff members who will come collect them and get them to our moderators in the back. All right, so let's get started. What is tonight all about? As Mr. Jackson has talked about, it's a celebration. We're coming to the end of another great, successful school year. It's also about talking about the growth and change in Richland Two. We continue to be a fast-growing district. Our average is about 400 to 500 students a year, and in many cases, that could be considered an elementary school a year. We continue to make our name as a district that embraces innovation. In fact, just this year, we were one of 9 districts across the country invited to join the Digital Promise League of Innovative Schools. Because growth and change are happening so quickly, we need your help, and that's why you're here tonight. We asked our schools and our advisory groups to let anybody and everybody know about the event. Anybody's welcome. We wanted them to recruit representatives from the schools and the groups so you can hear about the updated information, go back and share it with the members of your school family and district community who could not be here tonight. And speaking of rapid change, as I've seen up here on this screen, is a perfect example of rapid change in the district. I'm a new face to many of you, aren't I? That's because I just came to the district in February, which is why this is really my first opportunity as Executive Director of Communications to give a talk about Richland Two. So I hope you'll take it easy on me tonight. Another good example of change is our surroundings. Look at the classrooms. I'm sure some of us, many of us in the room remember chalkboards. Well, they were replaced by whiteboards, and now whiteboards are giving away to personal mobile computing devices. Well, where we are tonight is an example of change. I'm guessing, I'm not from this part of the Midlands, but I'm guessing this was probably an area once covered with trees. And now it's a beautiful building, a source of pride for the community, and a place where our students come to learn. But probably the most important change, and the one, if we're honest, is the scariest because of all the unknowns, is that we've had to adapt how we guide our children down their educational path in a relatively short span of time because of how quickly our society is changing. We're changing our instructional practices to prepare them not for jobs that you and I have, but for jobs that don't even exist, and because their world will continue to change on a dime. For those of us who remember the days where we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have YouTube, and Twitter, and 24-hour news, education is a lot different, isn't it? Well, think of it like that smartphone that you carry around. If you don't update the operating system every now and then, you will quickly become obsolete, and that's what we're looking at. But even as we change, we have to continue to take stock of who we are, where we are, and how we're doing. So we're going to spend a little bit of time doing that. Richland Two continues to be a diverse district. Did you know that we have 66 native languages spoken from 60 different countries that are represented among our 27,000 students? That is quite diverse. The breakdown of our student population is 59.1% African American, 27.1% white, 7.4% Hispanic, 2.9% Asian, and 3.5% from other backgrounds. In our 27,000 students, we have more than 3,000 military children attending our schools. 49% of our 27,000 are on free and reduced lunch. 400 to 500 of our students can be classified as homeless. And our transient population continues to rise. That means about right now 1 in 8 students who started school with Richland Two will not be back with us next year. The district currently operates 40 schools and centers with 35 magnet programs. And another first is opening up next year. We have Lake Carolina Elementary Upper, which is going to be our first one school, 2 campuses model. More than 3,500 employees, that's comprised of about 1,815 teachers, 121 administrators, 217 bus drivers and monitors, and roughly around 1,500 support staff, support the learning necessary to prepare our students to be productive citizens in a globally competitive society. We focus on providing quality professional development for employees that empower them to provide instructional programs that meet the needs of all learners. And when our students and our employees come together and focus on learning, great things happen. Our on-time graduation rate is about 81.1%. Now that's probably not where we want it to be, but it's coming up. In the last 2 years, it's come up by about 4.6%, and it's higher than the state percentage of 77.5%. Last year, our graduating seniors received more than $85 million in scholarships. Compare that to $8 million in just less than 20 years in 1996. This year again, we led the state with 678 national board certified teachers, and we're 12th in the nation with that number. The district has been awarded Race to the Top and Career Connect grants. That's giving us an additional $31.8 million in resources. That's going to help us increase even more access to technology and also look at redesigning high schools so that we can ensure we are preparing students for the workforce and promote workforce development and economic development. We received 22 Palmetto Gold and Silver Awards this year, and we received an excellent absolute rating on our report card and an excellent growth rating. And for the 8th time this year, since 2000, we had a State Teacher of the Year finalist, Patrick Kelly from Blythewood High School. In that same time frame, we've had 3 Richland Two teachers win the state title, and one teacher made it to the national finalists. One thing that hasn't changed is that this list of awards could go on and on and on. And my iPad is not turned off with its sound. Take care of that. How do we make all this happen? Well, of course, it takes financial resources. And that may be one of the most misunderstood parts and hard to understand parts of public education. So I'm going to try to simplify it down for us, but our CFO, Dr. Harry Miley's here, and if I don't get something right, he has my permission to stand up and correct me. But first, let's see a show of hands of people who think, those of us who think that our property taxes on the homes we live in account for 50% or more of our general fund budget. Oh, really? Well, good. Y'all are a very educated group because you are right. Our general fund budget this year is $223 million. We received just 36% of our general fund budget from local property taxes. And that doesn't include, that's not property taxes on owner-occupied homes. That's property taxes on local businesses, rental properties, cars, boats, other commercial entities. Act 388 removed the owner-occupied homes from that equation. We received 26% from the State Education Finance Act, 21% is from the State Property Tax Relief Fund. That's, again, where Act 388 comes in. 15% from the State Teacher Salary Supplement Funding, and 2% from other sources. Now, the next question is, how do you spend it, right? Well, we're in the people business. So it makes sense that 89% of our general fund budget is spent on salaries and benefits. And our total budget breaks down general fund to $9,467. Now, it has always been important in this district to be good stewards of the public's money. And we work hard to maintain fiscal responsibility while providing the best for our students. The district has maintained a AA credit rating for several years now that is issued by the top 3 credit rating firms. What that does is saves money to taxpayers when the district goes out and issues bonds for capital improvement projects. Another good example of how we're financially responsible. Now, I share all of this not to say, wow, we're overwhelmed, or wow, there's just no way to do it on such a large scale, or we're underfunded. I share it so that everyone can have a clear picture of how large and expansive Richland Two is, how much the Richland Two family encompasses. And I use the word family on purpose, because like Mr. Jackson said earlier, it's been very important in this district to maintain that close-knit culture among our students, our employees, our parents, and our community members. And on the first day of the job for me in February, on February 3rd, I could tell the first time I stepped into that office as a Richland Two employee. Now, we are all in this together, and like Mr. Jackson said, we have great successes that we need to shout from the rooftop, and we have challenges. We're in these challenges together, and that's why we have events like tonight, so we can all come together, get updates, find out what's going on, hear questions and concerns. Looking forward to the next year and successes and how we keep that going, we're going to bring up our superintendent in a minute, but I want to share some personal information. First of all, I want to let you know that when I met Debbie Hamm back towards the end of last year, it kind of solidified for me that I wanted to make the decision, if the opportunity came to me, to pick up and leave a district where I had worked for 11 years, where I grew up. I graduated from that district. My mother taught there for 30 years. My father graduated from there, and my brother. So I had deep roots. Well, when I saw that I had an opportunity to work for someone as talented and as dedicated as Debbie Hamm, I jumped at it. Now, she is not a new face to the district like I am. So you're probably wondering, why is she not up here talking? She's done a lot of talking lately, and I wanted to give her a break. But she has been here for 34 years. She's taught in our classrooms. She's led the Gifted and Talented program. She's led staff development. She's been a curriculum specialist. She's headed up the district's research, testing, and accountability programs, as well as served as the chief academic officer. Before becoming the person at our helm, she served as the chief information officer. In the 4 short months that I've worked with her, I can attest to you that she invests a lot of herself day in and day out for the sake of our students. So please help me welcome our superintendent, Debbie Hamm.
That was a very well, obviously, from the remarks you've heard, there's a lot that a school district needs to pay attention to. When you're growing, you need to pay attention to buildings, you need to pay attention to budgets, you need to pay attention to student safety. But when I was asked to serve as superintendent, I thought it was really important to identify some key areas that we needed to focus on that I thought were going to really directly impact students and teachers in our classrooms. And I chose 4 areas. The first one was learning, and some of you in the audience could recite these along with me, I'm sure. Learning, character, community, and joy as 4 priority areas. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done this school year that will be continuing into next school year, and then to try to touch base on some things that will be kind of beefed up in the upcoming school year as well. Obviously, as a school district, learning is our primary mission. That's the top foremost thing that we need to do. And this year we've spent a great deal of time focusing sort of on 2 areas of learning. First of all, to make sure that all of our students are going to have the opportunity to learn the Common Core state standards, which are the state mandated curriculum for South Carolina. We've developed implementation teams for each one of our schools, really built capacity, provided professional development and resources to ensure that our kids are going to do well and acquire those important skills which have been benchmarked to international college and career readiness standards. So that's one part of it. We've also, though, it's not just about curriculum. Learning is about the kids themselves. So we kind of delve deeply into our data to look at who are the kids that really most need assistance in our district? And what we found out are, first of all, and you saw some statistics that Libby showed you, that at the end of the year, 1 out of 8 kids leaves us. Our transient rate is extraordinarily high. We are getting new students all the time. And it's transient students, the ones that don't stay with us, that are coming to us new, oftentimes are the ones that struggle the most. So we put in place a transient student task force, and we're putting practices in place in our school district to make sure that as families move in and children move in, that they make a smooth transition into our schools academically as well as socially. So addressing those students' needs. We also know that probably the very highest predictor of poor performance in our school district is poverty. It turns out that is related to transience. We have a lot of kids that move because they can't afford to stay. They move from place to place because of that. But we have done a whole series of staff development focused on how do you meet the needs of children who come from homes of poverty, and are focusing on that. And we will continue both of those things into the next school year. But there are also some other things that we're beefing up that I think are really important. One of the best investments that you can make in educating children is preschool education. We know the money that you spend on 3- and 4-year-olds pays off tenfold in the long run. I don't know if 10 is exactly the right number, but it has a long-term impact on those children's academic achievement as well as how they do later on in life. So we're fortunate we're going to be adding teachers to our early childhood programs, and we will be focusing not only on additional classes, but on making sure that the professional development and the support of early childhood programs in our community, even if they aren't ours, are beefed up by providing and supporting professional development that goes on in those centers. You're going to hear us talking more about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We know that we need to be part of the engine that drives the welfare of our economy. Those are the fields where employment is just in demand, and we need to prepare our students for those fields. So we're working in those areas. And I'm going to talk about career readiness just in general. I don't like to say Kate the old career and technology education. That sort of sounds passé. But more and more we know kids need to have authentic experiences in the workplace, or bring those authentic experiences into our classroom so they learn more about what the world of work is like, and they become prepared for those careers that, as Libby said, don't even exist today. So that's another part of the learning that we'll be working on in the upcoming year and undoubtedly beyond. Character is important. It's not enough to have the academic skills. I think the public expects us to prepare children to be good citizens, to be good neighbors. And so our schools all have character education programs. I think one of the bottom lines for me is I really hope that we reduce suspensions and expulsions. And unless something really terrible happens between now and the end of school, there aren't that many days left. I think some of us who are in education are counting. But and our numbers are down in both those areas. In fact, for suspensions, they are significantly down. So some of that character education appears to really be paying off. But it's also an area, if you've been reading in the newspaper, the issue of suspension and expulsion and the disproportionate number of minority students who are often suspended and expelled is a national issue. So in the upcoming year, in fact, actually starting this summer, we'll be starting to put together a group of people to look at our data and put together a task force to look at what more can we do. It's nice that those numbers are going down, but we need to really look at what else can we do so that we can make them the minimum that they can possibly be. Community is the third area, and I'm so proud of the things that this school district has done this school year for our community. If you know anything about what our students have done, they have given thousands of dollars to the community. They have collected literally hundreds of thousands of canned goods. They have supported hundreds of foster children. We have students who give to the community. We won a prize from the United Way for the work and the contribution we were able to make to the United Way, and we participated with Richland One to raise money for the Walk for Life, and it was a phenomenal success. You as a community have been extraordinarily generous with us, and we want to make sure we give back to the community. And truly, unless we work together, us supporting the community and the community supporting the schools, the community won't be successful and neither will the schools. It is really a symbiotic kind of relationship where we are mutually dependent and we're going to do our best to work well with the community. And finally, the last area is joy. And I think that when you're a parent and you're thinking about your children, childhood is a unique time in our lives, and we want our children to be happy in school. So I think joy is an important factor just for the pure sentiment of it and what our expectations are. But from the standpoint of just hardcore objectives, we know that people who are happy, whether they're children or whether they're adults, perform better. So bottom line, if we want to improve academic achievement, we want to improve the performance of our employees, there is an important happiness factor. So it not only feels good, it does good. So joy is the fourth area that we have been working on. And I think those four areas together make for a pretty comprehensive package. And it makes me happy to walk through our schools. It has been a year when things have really been humming. I'm proud of the achievements, and I look forward to doing even more next school year. I guess now is the time I get to answer questions. You ready to move into the next phase? Is this the hot seat I sit in?
And Dr. Hamm, I'm just going to do one thing real quick.
Okay.
Mr. Jackson had recognized elected officials when he started, and we had one come in, I think, while I was giving my talk, so I wanted to just recognize Representative Mia McLeod has joined us tonight. We appreciate her coming. So.
Hello, I'm Terry Butts, and this is my colleague, Patrick Kelly. We are happy to be the facilitators for tonight's question and answer portion of UN2.
We'll be asking Dr. Hamm the questions you've written on the card you were given when you first came in. In addition to Dr. Hamm, we also have the district office executive staff here to help answer your questions.
Our goal is to be very respectful of your time. So if we're not able to get to all the questions tonight, please be sure you've written your email address on the back of the card so that we can respond to you by way of email.
And if you happen to think of a question you'd like to ask after we get started, feel free to write your question down on the card and hold it up. We have folks that will come by and pick it up so it can be included, and if you've already thought of something that you'd like to have included and you've recently written it, just hold it up and we will be sure to get it. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first question, and Dr. Hamm, you kind of addressed this in your opening remarks, but with recent legislative action in the state of South Carolina, what is the district's position on Common Core moving forward?
Well, I think there's well, first of all, there is absolutely a district position, and it is very consistent with what state policy and law is. The Common Core state standards through 2015 are the standards that are prescribed by the state of South Carolina, and we will teach those standards. Now, my personal opinion is that those are very good standards. A lot of work went into develop them. They are, as I said, benchmarked to some international standards. I think they will contribute to our students being competitive. I think that's critically important. And so personally, I favor the standards. My understanding of where that legislation is right now, there was an initial thing that made it sound like the standards were going to go away altogether. My understanding is where it is right now, there will be a review of those standards. I think there's likely to be some tweaking of those standards, but it's very unlikely that there will be a wholesale dismissal of the standards.
Thank you, Dr. Hamm. Our next question asks, why don't elementary schools have their own SRO?
Oh, money.
Okay.
You know, it's always a balancing act when you're trying to think about, you know, taxpayers and asking them to fund programs and people in our school district. And I'm proud to say that we worked with the sheriff's office this school year, and there was an opportunity to get a grant. We were able to add 4 additional school resource officers to serve our elementary schools. And we're in the process. The grant was one of those things where you get a lot of money to pay for salaries early on, and then each successive year the grant covers less of it. So we're each year picking up a little bit more of those salaries. But it's something that we're working on, and I think it's just a balance of, you know, where do you want to put our money? And we initially did have school resource officers in all of our schools, and the initial cuts, when we had tremendous cuts to our budget, we just had to make really hard choices about what we wanted to fund and what we couldn't fund. And, you know, safety is always a really important concern. So as we were making these decisions, we also put in place really careful plans about sharing resource officers and making sure that there was somebody close by to provide assistance when a school didn't have their own resource officer on campus.
All right. Next question from the audience is about zoning. Dr. Hamm, what are your thoughts on the free and reduced lunch ratio at Westwood High School? What steps will the district take in the future with zoning to even this out with sister high schools like Blythewood and other schools?
You know, rezoning schools is always very, very difficult. And as a school district, the free and reduced lunch, the number of students getting free and reduced lunch is growing over time. When you look at schools, like any school, there are boundaries. I think one of the difficulties with Westwood, for example, is you've got an interstate, and you've got a school on one side, a school on the other. The board looks at all of those factors and just makes the very best decisions they can, and lots of times the circumstances surrounding the situation, whether it's geography, neighborhoods, we try to keep neighborhoods together, just have an impact on what that distribution looks like. And I think the only thing that we can do is always have the very best data available to the board when they're making those decisions.
Okay. I'm sensing a common theme here, and there's one about funding once again. It says, how close are we to funding a foreign language teaching position in our elementary schools?
A foreign language teaching position.
Many. I'm reading the question as is. It says a foreign language teaching position in our elementary schools.
Schools, okay.
Yes.
Oh, golly. Well, first of all, I will say that I was like almost a French major. I am all in favor of having foreign language teachers in our elementary schools. And when you look at the profile of what graduates need to know in the 21st century skills, knowing a second language is probably a really important one. So the bottom line, again, is funding. If you consider the fact that right now we have, well, starting next school year, we'll have 19 elementary schools. The following, well, we've got a 20th one that's on the drawing boards. Adding 20 additional personnel is extraordinarily expensive, and if you add a single teacher, that means that the kids in elementary school are only getting a tiny little bit of foreign language instruction every day. Really, if we wanted to have a great foreign language program, we'd have multiple foreign language teachers at every school so that people would get daily instruction in a foreign language. So, you know, as I've been cogitating on that problem, and I have been thinking about it, I think one of the things we need to look at are the really successful models for foreign language immersion, so that we would have some schools that would offer really intensive foreign language programs. And that allows fewer faculty to go really far. And then also to look at the opportunities that technology provides. There are great foreign language programs available online that might supplement in other places, that they could take an online course.
Okay. And we just got another question from the audience, so as questions develop, please just hold them up and hand them off. And again, any general question is more than welcome. With Common Core standards being in place for the foreseeable future, do you see PASS going away as a source of grading for schools and teachers?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly PASS will go away because it's not aligned to those standards. So I feel confident that that's going to happen. I don't think I'm as confident about knowing what will take its place. I also think if you kind of survey what's going on, there's growing discontent with the amount of testing and the high stakes testing. And this is totally crystal ball. I could be so wrong. But I do think that in the next several years, I don't think testing will go away, but I think we're going to maybe see some of that level off in some way. Okay. That is a guess. I guess it's being recorded. We'll look back 5 years from now and go, oh man, she fouled that answer up. Or maybe look, wow, she was so smart.
Okay. Our next question asks, what are the district's future plans for magnet programs?
The most immediate plans for magnet programs are to really closely review our magnet programs. We've had, I think, magnet programs are really important to Richland Two. They're sort of one of our calling cards, that we're the district of choice. You can choose these wonderful magnet programs, but it's been a while since we've looked at them and said, you know, this has been around for 10 years. How do you polish this up to make it absolutely the best that it can possibly be? And I think that sometimes we need additional professional development. Sometimes it may be a technology magnet program. That's a really hard thing to pull off in this district when everybody's one-to-one. Maybe it needs to be tweaked so it emphasizes programming or engineering or something else. So we need to look at the programs and decide how do we upgrade those programs. In some cases I go, well, golly, this program has an elementary program that starts it, seems to have a high school that ends it. What's in the middle? And maybe we need to create a program that's in the middle. So I actually convened a group just this week to go through all the programs and think about how do they fit together, how do we make them better. I think they're such an important part of the district, they deserve to be the very best that they can be.
In a similar vein, dealing with magnets, this question is, can students participate in AVID and a magnet program at the same time? And if not, why not?
There's nothing about AVID itself that would preclude a student from being in AVID and another program. I think the biggest issue with AVID is that it has a class associated with it, and sometimes it's difficult to just do the scheduling. So you could be in a magnet program where you have to take a certain math class or a certain science class, and it's offered at the same time as the AVID program. The other thing I could imagine in some schools is if you've got a certain number of programs sort of to share among your students, you may feel like you can choose Avid or you can choose this or you can choose this, as opposed to letting one student take all of them and another student not be able to take any of them. But that's not a characteristic of Avid itself. So the answer is it depends on the school and the program and the scheduling.
I'm going to go ahead with this one because you were talking about how we have a program at the elementary level and then we have one at the high school level and we're missing something in the middle. This one asks, does the district have a plan for a middle school inquiry-based magnet program?
Well, we're talking about it. I can't make any commitments at this point in time.
Some water for you, Dr.
I do like the idea. Take staffing, it's one of those items that we'll look at and decide how to budget and how it fits in with all of the priorities. But it is one, we've got great, strong elementary programs.
Yes. As the parent of a CFI student, yes, we have very strong inquiry-based programs. This next one kind of shifts to the high school realm. With the decline, and I'm going to add on the death of HSAP as a high school exit exam, do you anticipate a rise in the graduation rate in the future?
No, I really don't. We have so few students who don't pass the exit exam. That's not anything that really has a major impact on our graduation rate. I don't think it maybe by tiny little fractions, but not anything significant.
Okay, I'm going to jump back to magnet just one more time, I believe, unless something else comes up. And this one was talking about transportation and why doesn't the district provide transportation for choice in magnet programs?
We tried a little experiment with that for the first time this year and offered transportation to the CAP program. And I guess the real difficulty is, it's very expensive. That it takes the state does not provide the buses for that. We bought a bus, provide a driver, cost of fuel and all that. And help me, how many students do we have in magnet programs and choice? 7,000. I'm looking at 7,000, 6,000. Think about providing a bus and transportation for 6,000 students. It's just exorbitantly expensive, but it is something we'll periodically come back to and say, what could we do differently? Is there a way that we might be able to make that possible? We haven't figured it out yet. It's a work in progress. It is a work in progress.
It's supposed to be Patrick's turn.
Okay, sorry. This next question, since we're talking about data and magnets, the question reads, speaking of data, would it be possible to consider magnet schools within schools separately than its home school when making funding and zoning decisions?
I don't know what, okay. Magnet schools within schools, separate than its home schools, for making funding and zoning decisions. I think this means that if I wanted to participate in I could be in my home school and for part of the day attend a magnet at another school. Is that what you think this means?
Possibly.
Can anybody tell me is that what this means? I see some nods, okay. Actually, that was one of the things we just talked about today. Would it be possible for students to, actually drive their car and, leave a campus, for example, and it's particularly at high school where we might want to offer specialized programming that they could leave and be in one school for part of the day and go to another school for a magnet or some career learning opportunity or something for another part of the day. That's part of what we have in mind when we open our new student learning center. And when we were talking about that, at that facility, we wondered, well, maybe we have these great opportunities on our high school. I can think about, the health programs at Ridgeview and culinary arts and barbering and other things. Maybe we should let kids move from place to place and have a different kind of system for how we think about the schools kids are assigned to. Take real advantage of the programming that we offer. So it's under discussion. Good question.
Might piggyback on this one. This one asks, will you talk more about strategies to reduce high school dropout in the district? And that may be one of them.
Well, that would be one of them, and we talk about that a lot and one of the main things we know that keeps kids from dropping out, and I think it partly goes back to this issue of character and community, is kids don't drop out of school if they feel like they're connected to somebody. That sense of, I'm part of this community, there's a teacher in this school, even sometimes just one person who really cares about me and my future. It's the relationship that matters and really prevents kids from dropping out lots of times.
Okay. This next question deals with Common Core and resources. With the incorporation of Common Core, when and will schools receive books consistent with the new standards? The question specifically asking in regards to helping parents have a reference book rather than having to solely rely on notes in regards to understanding Common Core.
What do I need to do? Click this.
Why don't we use this one? Can we turn hers off and use this one?
Is this going to be better? Can you hear me? In terms of textbooks, and I know a lot of people still like to have a textbook at home as a ready reference in relation to the course materials, particularly at high school, but often at all grade levels. We are bound by the textbook adoption process that the state has in place. I think one of the things that we have going for us as a school district is our one-to-one computing program, because there are so many wonderful resources that are available online. And one advantage of the Common Core is that it is common across all the states, and more publishers are developing materials that are available online that support learning the Common Core, and those are available oftentimes in your homes, at school, any place a student has to be. So that's a wonderful opportunity that our children have. And I also say that part of the training that we're doing on the Common Core for our teachers is to give them really a systematic way of looking at materials and saying, is this really a good resource for teaching the Common Core? Because I promise you, with the Common Core as an opportunity to market materials, somebody could probably look at my shoe and say, well, this is, correlated to such and such a standard, and try to sell it to you. So we're trying to really be discerning about what we identify as being good material to help kids learn the Common Core.
The remix. This next question, Dr. Hamm on the turntable. This next question piggybacks on what you talked about earlier with the poverty series. Does the district have plans for special programs to help students who do not have adequate resources and help at home?
We have a number of things that are in place. I think what first and foremost is, this increased emphasis on early childhood education and preschool as an opportunity for kids to get caught up before they're ever behind when they start school. I think that's important. We have after-school programs. Many of our schools have before-school programs. We have response to intervention, which provides additional layers of instruction for students to help them be successful. So there are multiple efforts underway to make sure that kids can succeed. And you have, when you talk about families in poverty too, we've got social workers, we've got nurses. It's more than just that people's academic needs that need to be met. I wish Abby Cobb were here. I mean, it's startling. We have, I think, over 100 students who are unaccompanied minors. I think that's right. You're nodding your head. These are, teenagers who don't have an adult that they're attached to. So you need to, there are all kinds of services that we provide to support students. Backpack programs, and talk about community involvement. We are so fortunate, the number of churches and other organizations, Rotary clubs, who have stepped up to make sure that kids eat over the weekend, because we have children, if it weren't for our backpack program, that wouldn't have food over the weekend. So anyway, people have been wonderful to our kids.
Dr. Hamm,
Hello? I'm on.
Hello? I can use my teacher voice. That's not a problem. Dr. Hamm, this question asks, why is it so difficult for African Americans with highly, well, the question is not worded. Let me correct this. Why is it so difficult for African Americans with highly qualified certification to obtain teaching positions in this district?
Lots of applicants for all of our jobs, so I think it's pretty hard for everybody to get a teaching job in this position. About the only place that it's easier is if you can teach a high-level science or a high-level math course where the choosings are a little bit sparser. But we have been on a quest to diversify our staff, and I've been here long enough to see that that has been happening steadily over time.
Somebody wrote two questions on the same card, so I'm going to try to combine them. And the question is in regard to accelerated reading and math. And the question talks about the importance of accelerated reading and math for transient students, as well as a lack of resources for students in our local public libraries that want to engage in accelerated reading and math. So does Richland Two have plans to consistently reinstate accelerated reading tests in classrooms? And will the district provide additional resources for students in those particular programs?
I think about half of our elementary schools are probably still using accelerated reading and those kinds of tests. And you know, there are multiple ways that you can provide incentives for kids to read. But one of the differences between the questions that are on those tests and the Common Core is the depth of the thinking and the interpretation that needs to go into the reading. And I think as the kind of reading skill that needs to come to bear on what kids are reading and an increased emphasis on nonfiction, that more and more reading is happening outside the context of AR. So I think it's an expense when you go, okay, you know, do I want to pay for that program or not? People are looking at how does it align with the reading skills that our kids most need to learn. And for the most part, they need to really be much more thoughtful about their reading than the kinds of generally factual, low-level questions that are on an AR test. It doesn't mean that they're not reading.
Why is the alert program at elementary level not incorporated into grade level curriculum? Why are they separated and held responsible for what is missing?
If the question is why isn't it integrated into the regular classroom, I think part of that is probably a couple of reasons. One is, you know, we've had a long history of having a gifted program in this school district that is the way our alert program is, and it has been over the years a highly touted, award-winning gifted program. Part of the requirements for the funding for that program are that class sizes have to be 20 students or less. So to be able to preserve that class size, you couldn't always incorporate it into a regular classroom. So that's part of the answer. But the other part of the answer is that one of the things we emphasize in professional development is to differentiate instruction. So when we have gifted kids in regular classrooms for the part of the day that they are in a regular classroom, their assignments should be differentiated. They should be challenged in that regular classroom, even if they aren't in the alert program during that part of the day.
Next question deals with Common Core. The question reads, when will our teachers be trained in Common Core? I currently have to refer to YouTube to teach my child the lesson. In some instances, my teacher has even referred me to another teacher's YouTube videos for instruction.
We have an implementation team for the Common Core at every school. we had provided training on the Common Core at every one of our schools. I guess part of me wants to track down who asked that question. Who is that teacher? But I won't do that. Okay, I'm going to throw that right back at you. Have you heard anything this year about the Common Core? Have you gotten any training?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good answer.
Where is my principal? Yes, we have gotten quite a bit of training. All of our professional development days, half days, those types of things, after school. Training. Yes, ma'am.
Lots of training. Great training. How are the needs of gifted and talented TAG students being met in the middle school? Then it says such as alert in elementary. So I think the question is asking, what is the middle school equivalent for alert?
The middle school has really emphasized honors level courses. Part of that was thinking that in preparation for the high school, accelerating their learning as opposed to only enriching their learning would benefit middle school students. And I'm going to ask Nancy Gregory to comment on that a little bit more. And she's laughing because I'm going to hand her the microphone. But she is a middle school principal and is working with curriculum. She may be able to answer that better than I can.
A lot.
That's what happens when
Sorry.
you have like 5 or 6 mics going at the same time. We appreciate your patience.
I think pretty much what Dr. Hamm said is the change was made from elementary to middle school to better serve or meet the needs of middle school kids as we were preparing them for high school. Instead of a pull-out program in middle school where they went to their social studies class for G&T, we were able to expand the opportunities and differentiate in subject areas where we had an honors science, honors social studies, so on and so forth, rather than isolating it. And I see some Blythewood Middle School parents here that are nodding, but giving them more opportunities, better preparing them for high school and for college and career. So, does that answer?
The track coach in me is loving this. It's like a baton.
Dr. Hamm, this question deals with cultural sensitivity. It says, how has the district dealt with how has the district dealt with what some parents see as a lack of cultural diversity for students who are deemed at risk due to socioeconomic inequities?
Yeah, over the years, we've done a number of things where we've focused on cultural diversity. As I said, this year, our particular emphasis has been understanding poverty, its impact on students, and how we can assist students at poverty. We worked with Francis Marion University, which has a Center for Excellence in that area, and that really has been our focus. So we really are trying to address that. We can work on it. I'll tell you, that's something that I think is going to continue to be a work in progress. To say we're working on it, we've done some professional development on it. It's something that you always have to continue to work on it. I'm not going to pretend that doing a series solved the problem.
That kind of answered the next question I had, so I'm actually going to steal yours. The question Terry has says, how can I get more involved in the district?
I'll talk to both of them at once.
Can I do one of these numbers?
I think there are several ways that you can. Is this working? Not on.
Nah.
Okay. There are several ways that you can get involved. First of all, one of the outcomes that we want to come out of this meeting is if you would like to be in a continuing dialogue to work on some of these issues, we want you to sign up. And in fact, take your program or something, give us your name and your email address, and tell us the area you're interested in, and we'll sign you up. I'm particularly interested in finding some people who are interested in the issue of suspensions and expulsions. I think that that's a really critical national issue and one that we need to continue to look at. But if you're interested in curriculum and instruction or these other areas, let us know, because we're hoping to find out and surface those issues that exist and to put people together out of this group who will continue to work. So this is sort of the beginning of an ongoing dialogue to work on areas of interest to the community. You can also contact our community relations office. You can volunteer in our schools. I will say, if you have an interest in business, we're looking for business partners always to give our kids those work experiences. So there are a multitude of ways that you can be involved. Talk to us about it. We'll link you up one way or the other, maybe more than you want to be linked up.
We need the microphone. Can you take this? Thank you. This one's a little wordy, so stay with me. With advances in one-to-one computing, project-based classroom learning, all good things, how can we parents keep up with what our kids are learning and where they need help? Once we get grades, it's too late. Edmodo, etc. is, as used, not the answer to this environment. We don't want to bombard teachers for information, but we need to do our jobs with our kids also. How can parents stay in touch more effectively?
Oh golly, good question. I think one way that you keep up is by talking to your kids and asking to see their work. And I think back, and you can look at what they're doing online, for that matter, if it's a project or whatever. Think back to elementary school when the folders came home with all the kids' work and you could see what they were actually doing. I think as we work more and more in the project-based learning realm and the kinds of products that kids are developing online, you need to think of it more like the folder going home, that you need to look at the work itself and talk to the children about it. Your child about it, if you don't understand it, ask teachers about it. Because projects will have checkpoints in them where you can see progress towards a checkpoint in a project. But as you said, sometimes as a parent, you find out that they didn't make that checkpoint after they've already not made it. So I would say, first of all, don't hesitate to ask a teacher what the expectations are. The older kids, the kids ought to be able to tell you what the expectations are. And, we're here to answer your questions.
All right, the card I've got is a two-parter, and I can actually answer the first part. The first part was about questions directly from the audience, and we're going to deal with that in just a second by turning it over to Libby after this final question. So the question on the card is, could you please explain the school district's protocol regarding equity in school buildings and facilities?
I think I'll address that in two ways. One of them is that as a school district, I think we have regularly reinvested in our facilities. You can look at some of our oldest schools, and we have regularly put resources into making those schools good schools. Maybe as well as almost anybody has done that. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of in our buildings. The flip side of that, though, is because we're a growing school district, we always have new schools. They're always a little bit better than the old schools. There's always some envy, and there's always the school that is sort of the one that was last renovated, if that makes any sense. So there's somebody who's brand new and shiny, and there's someone who was brand new and shiny, but isn't the one that, it's the next one that's going to be renovated, so they're not quite there. So it's not equal, but there is a constant ongoing effort to upgrade our facilities. We just finished doing that at Richland Northeast. I think probably our next focus is Ridgeview. So you kind of get in a cycle of doing it, and it comes in an order. And there's always somebody who's the best and the newest and just the most recently renovated, and there's always someone who is the last one and wishes that they were better than they were.
I think that got all our cards, and the question that I wanted to address was, why were we having people fill out the questions on the cards? And that's for my benefit. As communications director, I kind of wanted to keep track of what questions were asked. That's how we find out what information we don't do a good job of sharing and what information we need to do more consistent job of sharing. So we wanted to spend most of the time focused on those questions. Also, in case we had a big crowd, we want to be able to get to as many as we could. But we do want to take just a few more minutes. We were trying to be very respectful of everybody's time, and we'd like to try to get you out of here before 7:30. But I'd be glad to take about 5 minutes or so if we had some people who'd like to specifically ask some questions that maybe they felt like they couldn't get down in a card. So I know that we have one gentleman. I'm going to walk my way to him, and if you or someone else raise your hand, again, we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to do this, okay? Let me start with the gentleman who asked for this opportunity first.
And I apologize, Libby, I'm going to check this microphone, and we're going to hand this one back up onto the stage.
Don't y'all like this double teaming stuff here? We appreciate your patience with the mics. When you start adding, when I told my staff I needed about 4 or 5 wireless mics and some lapel mics, I think they were all like, "You've only been here 4 months. You can't make this." But they have been very accommodating. So let me let this gentleman ask his question. Then I think we have a mic up there that'll work.
Okay, great. First of all, Dr. Hamm and members of the board, let me thank you for what you do for children. For those of us that are parents, we know that you have a very tough job for what we have to do with children in our district. So we want to thank you for the tough task that you have to do. I have a 3-part question, Dr. Hamm, so I hope, and if you tell me to stop, I'll shut up. But the first question that I had, when the young lady was going over the slides and she showed the percentage of taxes that folk pay for purposes of our school district, one question that I didn't see raised was the amount of taxes that the citizens in Richland Northeast pay toward bonds. That was not a part of that. So maybe someone can speak to the whole issue of how much we're paying in bonds, because we hear, all of us who get tax notices clearly see that we're paying a significant amount of revenue in this district as it relates to bonds. So that's one question. The second question that I have, certainly in light of a lot of the redistricting that's been taking place lately with regard to rezoning and school choice, I hear quite a bit from parents who say that when I choose, the district chooses for me. I don't get to make a choice for the school that I would like for my child to attend. Certainly in light of the fact that with all of the redistricting that goes on and the rezoning, and I understand that with the population growth the way they are out here, but I would love for you to speak to that issue for me, because obviously as we continue to grow, that will certainly continue to be an issue, and it will certainly place parents in a position where they won't be able to select the choices that they would like. So that's my 2-part question. I had a third one, but I can't remember what the third one was.
Okay, I'll start to address the first part about bonds and the capital expenses that the district has. And I will say, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Miley to comment on it. I think historically, and I am proud, that in this district we have cared about the facilities that we put our children in. We want them to have attractive schools, not exorbitant schools, but attractive schools that make them proud, and the walls speak to them and say, we value learning, we value you, this is an important place for you to be and for you to learn. And so we do build nice schools, and we do maintain our schools, and we do reinvest in our schools so that our old schools aren't old and crummy and our new schools brand new and shiny. We have made those reinvestments, and we pay for those in 2 ways. There's an 8% fund that allows us to do smaller projects. That again is our bonds that were purchased without a bond referendum. But the largest part of that are building funds that are procured through, we get because our taxpayers vote in a bond referendum for building and improving school facilities. And I think it's important that we make that investment in our communities. These schools aren't just places for kids, but they are enhancements to the community. So I am proud of those investments. Now, in terms of what the amounts of those are, I'll let Dr. Miley go through that information.
Thank you, Dr. Hamm. The state government provides a great deal of funding for operating revenues for all districts across the state, but I think Beaufort County doesn't get a whole lot for state money. But the state government does not provide, I think they've provided a few $1 million over the years, but typically they have not provided any capital funds for capital improvements at the school district level. It's all been on the local district's responsibility to pay for all capital improvements. I can't remember the last time state government provided significant capital funds for any school district in the state. So capital improvements are funded by millage on all property in the district. Homeowners, they were not exempted by Act 388. Businesses, manufacturing, all property owners pay for school improvement bond issues. Does that answer your question?
It does. I guess
that millage is set by the auditor.
Yeah.
Remember?
And I'm sorry, I hate to walk over to you, Harry, but the only follow-up to that is, if as we continue to see growth, will we continue to see tax increases? And the question becomes, what is the delicate balance there with regard to, because it's no way with the taxes that people are paying currently, if we continue to tax at that rate, there's no way folks will be able to continue to pay taxes on that.
Well, and it is a challenge. We've got the choice of growing enrollment and not building new schools, which would lead to larger class sizes, which everybody that I've talked to suggests that that's not the direction to move, is larger and larger classrooms. So in terms of the dilemma we have is, due to the state not providing capital improvement funds, which is historically has not done, it's to the local district to provide for those improvements. And we don't have any other way at this point. The state legislature, Representative Butler, you may help me here, but I know there is a particular tax, there's a law, that's a bill proposed to help 1-cent sales tax for school improvements. But I'm not sure it's going to get through the legislature this year, but that would be about the only other way that I've seen proposed to offset capital improvements, debt service on property taxes at the local level.
One other piece to your response, and that is, I do see that our aware of the tax burden that's there. And this year, the budget that they passed has a $0 mill increase associated with it. In the past several years, they've never asked for the maximum that's allowable by law. And I think that is because they pay attention to what that total tax burden is. And undoubtedly, compared to other districts where there is not growth and there isn't the expense of building, there aren't those capital expenses. But the fact of the matter is, when you're growing by 400 or 500 students a year, there's a point at which you can't just keep cramming those kids into existing buildings. You have to build schools.
I think we have one right here.
Again, good afternoon, Dr. Hamm and Superintendent, core principals and whatnot. My question is, I'm a pastor in the community. I'm a parent in the community, and I'm an educator as well. I live in the community, but I work in another district. That being said, having a child in the district, I was in theology, there's a term called sins of commission and sins of omission. Either you're working with it or you're not saying anything about it. a couple of weeks ago in the state newspaper, I saw a quite disturbing article about the prison pipeline, and Richland Two was disparagingly associated with that prison pipeline for African American males. As an African American male, I have a daughter in the district, but I don't have a son, but I'm concerned about our sons. And how would you address just being characterized and even being mentioned in that article as a district?
I think one of the reasons why I thought character was so important to emphasize as one of those 4 key areas we're working on is that issue. And as I said, I think one of our real successes this year, 2 weeks, is that the number of suspensions and expulsions is down. And one of the big predictors of that school to prison pipeline is kids being suspended and expelled. So if we can continue to work on that issue and get that down, and it's, as I said, it's coming down, which I am proud of, but we're going to amp that up even more next year and continue to work on that. I think that makes a difference. It is a very complex problem. It is a very complex problem. You said, you know, it's males, it's African American males. It also is, in our data, is highly correlated to poverty. And so, you know, that becomes a difficult issue. But I think all we do is just keep working on it. If you went and visited our schools, you'd find they have programs that try to address character. I wish is Jeff Timoni in the audience? Back there. I mean, he's an example of you might want to talk to him about the wonderful program he has for young men in his school, and there are multiple examples, but he made a presentation to the board about what he's doing at Kelly Mill Middle School. So we have programs in place that we hope will make that situation better. I don't know that will solve it, but we certainly are working on it.
To plug in, since you mentioned you're a minister, a partnership opportunity. The district has lots of, about 3 or 4 advisory councils, and one of them is, I'm not sure if I'm going to remember the name, but it's the Northeast Minstrel Alliance. And we meet with them periodically. So we want to make sure that we get your information and you're on that list, because looking at that group, we just met with them last week, and that was one of the topics that we've talked about with them is Shirley Vickery and Abby Cobb, who are in our student learning or support services, has talked a lot with that group on ways that we can partner with our ministerial community to address some of these areas of concern. So we certainly want to make sure we get you on that list. We're going to do the one more quick one. It was about the zoning, and as more and more the district having to rezone, let me make sure I recapture this right, rezone and how parents will continue to have a choice, even if we have to rezone because of growth.
You know about
choice, how we'll be able to give parents a choice, even though we have to continue to rezone because we're a fast-growing district.
Interesting. One of the last surveys that I looked at about why people choose choice was because they wanted to keep their kids at their home school during rezoning. And I think that says a lot about our schools, that they like their school so much that they want to stay there. And periodically we probably need to, you know, update that data because it's been a while since we've done that. But you know, choice has some limitations. We have magnet programs that are strictly lottery, so anybody has an equal chance of getting in. We have magnet programs that are criterion-based, based on interest or test scores or a combination of various things. Talent, if it's in one of our arts magnet programs. We have just district choice that sometimes is by lottery only, but sometimes we just have to close schools to choice because we literally don't have room on the campus to put additional portables or kids. And we also put some limits on the number of kids that can choice into or out of a school so that we're not moving tremendous numbers of faculty or portables or something from place to place in a way that might become disruptive of the school. So we probably offer as much choice as almost any place offers, but it does have some criteria in some cases or some limits in some cases.
They're going to turn me back on. It is getting to be 7:30, and I said we'd only be here for 60 minutes when I started talking, and I've gone beyond that. So to respect your time, we are going to wrap it up tonight. If you have questions you didn't get a chance to ask, please come up. That's another reason why we have this event, is so you can have time to talk to people that you may not see on a regular basis from the district office. Before we go, I want to give a big hand to our moderators and our superintendent. I had the easy part. I got to rehearse what I did. I got to practice. My staff had to hear me talking in my office over and over and over. And Dr. Hamm, especially with the help of our senior executive staff, had to be prepared to take questions on moment's notice. So that takes a lot of courage, but it speaks to our wanting to hear from you, talk to you, hear your questions, and have opportunities like this. We hope this is just the first of many U2 events, because remember, and the information that went out about what we're saying is it's all about U and 2. Thank you, and have a good night.